Hey folks, this is Keylime here with a week in review, or a week preview, however you want to call it. I figure I'd do this weekly video where at every Monday when the game resets, I'll give an overview for PC and Switch, as best I can, at least for Switch, giving an overview of what's coming new, what to expect, and all that kind of fun stuff. So, with that being said, this week the main event is Guild Wars. So Guild Wars is of course where you go and you set your defenses, you do your attacks and all that good fun stuff. I strongly recommend that you upgrade your sentinels to a comfortable level if you can. This will definitely help you and your guild out, so it's always fun to do. Make sure you jump into your defenses and actually set those. I haven't actually adjusted these yet, so the colors don't quite match. But you always want to make sure that you're jumping in here and setting your defenses. Really quick for folks that are new to Guild Wars, your defenses don't need to be anything special as far as color matching. These just need to be unique troops. You'll see at the bottom it mentions you get a bonus for using different troops. So just make sure that every single one of these troops is different and you'll get an extra bonus points just for doing that. But beyond all that, you don't need to worry about color matching anything. For your attack teams, those are the ones that need to be color specific. So on Brown Day, you want to be using a brown color troop for all of these to get the maximum amount of points. So always keep that in mind. Defenses don't need to be color matched. It's your offenses that need to be color matched. So that's your Guild Wars fun stuff. Make sure you jump in there and do that. As far as the event keys this week, Pan's Veil troops, which means that the Wild Queen is the mythic troop that you'd be interested in. I actually just got her this morning. Wild Queen is definitely someone that's worth chasing. I wouldn't put her in like a super high tier as far as epics go, but she does have some cool stuff that's worth talking about. This mix of 22 skulls and green gems. Whenever you see a troop that can do gem creation like this, that means they have loot potential, so that's always going to be nice. And she happens to steal a decent amount of attack and give it to your first ally, which is pretty nice. So overall, a pretty decent mythic. Nothing I'd put in the top tier, as I mentioned. No real traits that are worth talking about. In fact, this Bone Storm can potentially help, potentially hurt, depending on how you build your lineup. Whenever you see a trait like this that is per turn, I usually like these less. The way that Gems of War works these days is that the amount of turns you take should be pretty low. So getting a benefit at the start of every turn is not really the best thing in the world. So that's who's in the event keys this week. So if you go into event keys and you spend them, that's kind of the troop that you're looking to get, at least from a mythic perspective. Beyond all of that, there's some new stuff this week. So let me jump into, holy crap, there we go. The new troops and stuff. So I'll start with the Switch folks. With the Switch folks, there's a new epic troop called Barghast. Really what this person's about is dealing some damage. You get some utility out of this burn and fairy fire. So burning, for folks that don't know, is the troops that are burning will take 2 damage every turn. If they have no more shield left, this will actually break barriers as well, so something to keep in mind. Fairy fire is of course something that makes them weaker to magic damage, so they'll take an extra 50% magic damage. So he's doing 24 damage to both an enemy and the one below them. So that's pretty cool. You'll hit 2 people for a decent amount of damage. That's not bad at all. In terms of this final trait, this exploding a red gem at the start of battle, if you're really low on trait stones, I wouldn't necessarily go way out of your way to try and get this. It sounds kind of nice, but you only get it once, and it's, you're not really going to get a ton of mana from it. Sometimes this will help you, but nothing that's really worth breaking the bank on your trait stones to try and get. Overall, a decent troop. If you're just starting out, this will definitely be a really solid troop to have, but if you're more towards the end game, this troop isn't really going to help you out all that much. Then speaking about the Tomes of Sin weapon, that's available as well. So decent damage, dealing 26 to an enemy. That in and of itself isn't all that great, but it's at least something. The more interesting thing about this weapon specifically is that if there's 13 or more purple gems, you'll summon troops. So what this really goes to tell you is that in order for this weapon to be used effectively, you're going to want to have a lineup that's causing purple gems to show up a lot. So that's either going to be running Dark Storms, having mana conversions like a Graveseer, for instance, that are making purple gems, using a mythic like Elamogrim, which will create purple gems, potentially someone like Queen Aurora, as far as mythics go, that can also create purple gems and takes purple gems. Whatever you use this weapon, if you're going to be trying to use it effectively, you want to line up that's going to be creating a lot of purple gems. This kind of a weapon is something that's more of like a cleanup type weapon or a life-saving type weapon, since it summons troops. This is not something that I would, build a lineup around, for instance, but it can potentially save your ass if you're kind of, down on the ropes and you get this cast off and you might summon some cool stuff. Kind of interesting. I wouldn't call this weapon all that great, but if you're just starting out, you don't have a whole lot else, like you could potentially try and build around this. It's not the worst thing in the world, just not necessarily the best either. Jumping over to PC, or mobile, or PS4 or Xbox, all those fun people. There's some interesting new troops here. So we have Lupina Explorer. What they're really bringing is some level of loot potential and mana generation. So with Destroy, again, you're getting full benefit of all the gems in that row and in that column that you destroy. So that's kind of interesting. The total mana cost for this person is only 13, so it's not that hard to get them full. With them having this Agile trait, this kind of implies that they're meant to be at the front of your lineup. So that's kind of interesting, because this troop doesn't necessarily seem like it's something I'd really want to put in the front of my lineup. So that in and of itself makes it a little less exciting. The spell armor does give it some survivability, but overall it's not especially interesting. Something else that's kind of not great is that you're getting boosted by green gems, which would seem to imply you want to be having green gems on the board, or you could just use them as circumstantial. I think I saw the boost on this troop was ×4. But since this troop doesn't cost any green, and having greens on the board, you're not really going to get a whole lot of synergy between this troop and the amount of green gems on the board unless you're doing something tricky. So overall, this troop is okay. I wouldn't say it's awful. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's got a little loot potential. It's annoying because it'll knock some enemies to the back. So for, switching up lineups, I could see this being a little more interesting on defense. Getting your troops jumbled around like that is always very annoying when you're attacking. So that could be fun. But, it does damage to 2 people, so that's not so terrible. Since it's a wild folk, you do get a little synergy with a troop like King Silencius. He'll make all your wild folk start with 50% mana, so with this troop that would put them almost basically 1 gem match away from being full. So overall, kind of interesting troop. I wouldn't say it's the best in the world, worst in the world. It's, it's pretty interesting. It's got some loot potential, it does decent damage, it messes up the enemy team board. It's kind of cool. The other one is Starflower. So Starflower is, I'm just going to say, is going to be super annoying. Having Starflower for offense maybe isn't the best thing on the planet. There's a lot of troops these days that do damage to all, so the fact that she does 22 damage to all is definitely cool, but it's not exactly noteworthy. Being boosted by ally and enemy Fae, that's not amazing either. Generally Faes aren't used that much, like the Frost class, the Frost Mage class is a Fae type, but generally there's not a lot of Fae troops that are all that amazing, so the odds of your enemy using a bunch of Fae troops or you using a bunch of Fae troops is probably not that high. She's not even Fae herself, so that's not exactly great either, so I wouldn't expect to get a whole lot out of that boost, but that's still a good amount of damage to everybody, so that's nothing to, sneeze at, I guess. But more annoying about her is more this other stuff. So she'll summon a random Fae troop. So that's kind of interesting. Whenever you use her, she'll cast and then summon a troop. But then there's also a 20% chance when you cast that she's going to transform somebody into a pixie. So she's going to be super annoying. Whenever you have a troop summoning type lineup, that's always annoying to deal with. So like if you're attacking and someone's defending with this kind of a troop, someone that summons is always annoying, and then someone that has the chance to transform is also annoying. So I could see this troop being used on defense in some capacity. The only thing that I really don't like about this is that there's no loot potential on this troop. The spell armor's okay, but the Fey Link isn't really all that interesting. A 50% chance to maybe fairy fire something at the start of your turn isn't all that great. So overall, this troop's okay. Probably cooler on defense because of the annoying traits that it has, but nothing that I could really see myself building around for offense. So that covers the new stuff that's coming out on Switch and PC. The other things of note is that there's actually a couple of interesting stuff happening, at least on the PC side. So if you check out Terran's World, it's a place that has a lot of cool spoilers as far as what's coming up. There's a new Tidecaller class coming out for PC at least, or the other platforms, just not Switch, I assume. Tidecaller is a merfolk troop, so that's kind of strange. If you're familiar with merfolk, you know that they're very submerge-oriented, usually blue mana heavy. Tidecaller seems like it's going to be an okay class, so the weapon that it comes with does some heavy splash damage, which means it'll hit the main troop that you target for full, but then it'll hit the two next to it for 75% of that damage. So that's pretty decent damage coming out of this weapon. And it's getting boosted by blue allies and enemies 4 times. So that's pretty decent. Like I said, since merfolk are typically blue, you're probably going to have a lineup of 3 to 4 blue by yourself, so you're already going to get about a 12x, or plus 12 on the amount of damage that you're doing with that, so that's kind of cool. And then if you kill somebody, it's giving 3 magic to your allies and submerging them all, so that's okay. Like, obviously you're not going to be killing a ton of enemies, so you're not going to be able to build some epic, like, magic pumping thing using this weapon. So overall, I'd say this weapon's pretty cool. I don't see myself really using it all that much. I'm not a big fan of not having loot potential with my weapons, so this is something that if I was going to use it, I'd probably have it in like a 3rd slot or a 4th slot, and using my top troops to do all the heavy lifting, and then maybe using this as like a finisher or something like that. Submerging everybody has some level of utility, but there's not a lot of benefit to having all of your people submerged unless you're fighting against a team that's only doing like AoE kind of damage. So overall an okay weapon. But as far as the class itself, what's kind of interesting is that it comes with this default trait of exploding a blue whenever you match 4 or 5 gems. So that's kind of interesting. You're getting some natural explosions coming from that. So helping your mana generation, helping jumble up the board. That's kind of cool. Submerging yourself whenever you take damage, that's also kind of cool. It's not going to save your life like constantly, but it is kind of a nice little perk, a little self-preservation there. As far as its talent trees go, Arcane is always kind of nice. As far as heroes go, starting with 50% mana is always great. You're never going to see me complain about having that. You get a little magic defense here in the form of your spell reduction here with this trait. So Arcane is pretty decent. Those are probably the 2 notable talents there, is your spell resistance and you're starting with 50% mana. This 50% mana boost is really the thing that's going to make this potentially a useful class. If it didn't have this, I couldn't see myself ever using this. As it stands now, I might end up using this. Water is always fun. You get snap freeze, so you just freeze somebody right at the start. That's definitely always helpful. Deluge is always nice because it'll submerge your team just naturally. So since, submerging all of your team members just by playing the game, that's always fun. So a little self-preservation there. Water mastery, so you're getting some benefits to blue, so that's very symbiotic with the way that merfolk typically worked, having lots of blue troops, so that's kind of fun. And then this last one, merfolk gaining 2 magic when an enemy dies, that's really not all that useful. At best you're going to get like maybe 2 to 4 to 5, well not 5, but 6 magic from this. So overall, I would say that this class is okay. I'm not really compelled to level it up just yet, but there's not a lot of merfolk that I would really prefer to use. So overall, I'd say this class is okay. You can maybe do some interesting stuff. I do like the loot potential of that 3rd trait. It's nice that it gets 50% mana start, so that's pretty cool. So that covers that. And that more or less covers everything that's interesting this week. So overall, I'd say it's a pretty fun week. If you're on PC, Guild Wars is always at least my favorite time. It's fun to jump in there and do some fights, see how good you are. There's some decent stuff coming out this week. The last thing that I'll mention is that there's actually a new mythic, at least on PC side. So over here we're going to be getting on Friday this Shade of Zorn troop. So they're kind of cool. It's a undead orc type. So there's not a lot of great orcs in the game, so I'm at least appreciative of the fact that they're adding a new orc into the game. As far as its actual ability, so you're doing X number of damage to an enemy boosted by red allies and skulls. That's kind of interesting because it's a 4x boost, so you'll probably get at least some decent amount of damage out of this. It seems like for this troop specifically, the damage is going to be okay. Maybe the more interesting thing is that if you kill an enemy, you get a little bit of a summon. So the Fist of Zorn is that empowered troop that'll convert yellows to skulls. So that's interesting, but in terms of loot potential, there's really nothing here. It's just kind of like a set and forget. You shoot off your ability, and hopefully that was fun. It's stealthy, so that's always annoying to deal with from the enemy side. He's going to be relatively safe when he's on the board. What's weird is that he's stealthy, but he has this ability to gain mana when he takes damage. That's not ideal. These don't really play with each other very nicely. Like, he's set up to not really take damage, but then he also has a perk that gives him mana when he takes damage. I don't know. It doesn't feel like an epic level mythic here. He just seems like he's okay. I'm not even sure if he's okay, actually. He might be kind of bottom tier just by looking at it. I don't see a lot of benefit to summoning these troops. It could be a really cool finisher, just summoning these troops and then spamming with the instant conversions to skulls. That could be kind of fun, but I can't really see myself trying to build around this hero or this troop. It doesn't seem like he's all that great. So I'm happy that they released a new orc, but I wouldn't necessarily call this an amazing mythic of any kind. But again, he comes out Friday, so if you're looking to use your keys or save your keys, he'll be in the chests as of Friday, and then he'll be in that chest pool for another week after that. So until Thursday of the following week, he'll be available in VIP, in Gem, in Glory. He'll be in all those chests, not event chests. So that covers everything for the week. Hopefully you found this interesting, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks.